Okay, so I said yesterday that I had kind of thought of what my theme and title and such were going to be, and pretty much I was kind of thinking of it, and I'm like, these animals are all from different parts of the world and that sort of thing, but the dinosaur being a skeleton, a skeleton, a skeleton or a skull. And then these little birds, which, they're not, but they kind of made me think of the dodo bird. And I'm like, the look on her face and the way she's touching her hair and her face, it's like, it made me think of like, aging and getting older. And then I'm like, what about extinct animals? And so I was kind of thinking of extinction and kind of thinking of, our mortality and, losing our youth and, do women sometimes, think, gee, I'm getting older, I'm getting wrinkled, I'm starting to feel like I'm, like an extinct animal or something. And then I was thinking about, sort of the environmental impact of, all these different species of animals that, become extinct, and we don't, as a race, seem to be too worried about it. We don't seem to be too worried about climate change and what we're doing to our own environment, and is it possible we're making ourselves extinct in the process? So that's kind of like where my head started going, and so I'm just going to give the page the title of Extinction. And I know I'm getting into the area that I'm going to need to cut into, but I think it'll be fine. It'll still read fine. And then I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to do my journaling. I'm probably just going to speed through when I do the final edits on the video. I'm just going to speed through the journaling part of this. Okay, the pen that I'm writing with is a new pen for me called the uh, Gold Shadow, I think it is. Yeah, Jelly Roll Gold Shadow gel pen. It's kind of a glittery gold. Sure, almost a greenish antique gold. See if I can get it to focus a little bit. There we go. Well, for a second. Anyway, it's not a glaze pen. It's more like just a basic jelly roll, but the writing is very metallic. I like it a lot. Now, to do a little bit of, like a finishing touches on this, I'm going to go back to that stencil that I was using, which I think will kind of help bring everything together. And I'm going to mix up, let's see, I got to kind of move everything around. I'm going to mix up a little more of that brown again, like I did before. I think this is rock hard, so it felt soft for a minute, but so I'm going to get more of my Payne's Gray and more of the burnt sienna and a little bit of white, just to lighten it up enough that you can see it. Otherwise, it would be really, really super dark. It's a little on the red. Well, let's see. There we go. That's pretty good. Lost the stencil. Oh, there it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and stencil over some of my journaling. For me, that's, it doesn't faze me. But the point to the stenciling is to make everything really flows pretty good now, but I really just want to push that a little bit further and make sure that I'm getting the most out of bringing the layers together. And I just kind of need to be a little bit careful because I don't have a wide edge on this stencil. Oops. And you can do this any way that appeals to you. You don't have to use stencils. You could just use paint. You could use markers. Spray inks. You could add a border with a strip of paper, maybe a pattern paper that kind of felt like it worked with this look. Anything that you want to use. Stencils and paint just tend to be, when I think about, sort of like finishing touches, on my pages, I almost always think about using my stencils somehow to get there. So I'm just looking for areas in which I kind of think that I can get away with adding the stencil paint and the paint through the stencil, not lose the overall idea of whatever it was that I'm covering up, and yet at the same time or equally be able to use it as a means of pulling things together, so that everything starts to flow a little more. I'm just debating, actually, like looking at the the pattern and the cutouts and debating where I want to try to add the stenciling. Now I'm kind of out already of paint. I never seem to make enough. And I think I've even said that once already in this very video. This is a little bit on the warmer side, or excuse me, cooler side. It's not as red. When you mix, unless you're really, really careful with your mixes, you're not going to get the same color every time. Sometimes that is a problem for me. And I have to be really careful and make sure I mix well. Sometimes I could care less. This is one of those cases where it's just an accent color. I'm not real worried if it's not perfect. It's not like I'm painting a face with it. And I'm not working on an actual painting, so I don't want to get too worried, too uptight about it. All right, I think that's probably pretty good. I'm going to get a baby wipe and clean up my little mess here. And I promise, I've got quite a few videos already pre-recorded because I'm actually recording this one a second time. But I promise that the next new video I record, I will clean up my craft sheet so it's not such a mess for you guys to look at. All right, I guess I'm just going to kind of hold it up and show you. And you can see how it sort of kind of starts to give everything a nice little flow. It's not as easy to pick out each item as collage. And then for the final bit that I kind of want to do, and I want to do this before I recut these holes, is I want to add dark just on the two sides, maybe at the bottom. I'm not sure yet. But I'm just going to cheat and use, well, it's not cheating, but I'm just going to use this water-soluble little oil pastel. It's just a kid's product, but it does an excellent job. And I'm just going to put a little bit along the edges, and then I'm just going to rub it in. I used to sit and do this with ink pads and then real regular oil pastels, which I would only do at the very, very end because you can't do, couldn't write a lot over them or anything. But now that there have been so many water mixable products come out, I've been using the water mixable oil pastels. I just like the way that you can soften the edge. I'm not softening the edge that much on this, but when I want to, I can really soften that line so that it's not completely dark when it comes into the page. Let's see. Just thinking as to whether I want to do the bottom or not. I think I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom, but I'm definitely not doing the top of it because I don't want to completely block the page in. And usually when I do this, that's, what I'm intending to do, and so I do all of them. But I don't really want to do that. And I'm going to round the little corners a tiny bit. Okay. So that just gives, I think, some depth. I got some on her hand. It gives a little bit of depth to the overall page. And again, I think it helps just sort of to pull it all together. I'm going to clean this up so I don't get it on the reverse side. Wow, there's so much paint and glue and ink and everything else on here. Okay. And then the only finishing, touches that I might change or, additions I might make is I might do a little bit of doodling with the gold pen just so that it will kind of pop a little bit. And I would just do it in some of the areas that don't have a lot going on. And again, bring it up onto the different collage pieces so that it helps to make it feel like it kind of flows together. And I'm just literally just tapping and doing little tiny dots basically with this pretty gold pen. And you could do this in a bunch of different ways. You could do any type of doodle that you like to do, just sort of randomly around a few different locations on your page. think that's about it for me. So there you go. This, kind of forget that we started out with showing how to use the stamps. I don't think you would ever look at this page and think, oh, they did some stamping first. I don't think it's even, clear how that got there. Probably you would assume that it was patterned scrapbook paper. It would be, that's what I would kind of think if I looked at this and didn't know differently. And then we transitioned